habits do you have? Actually, to make this a bit more fun, what bad habits do you have? You know those sort of habits which are like super annoying to people, those ones which just drive people crazy. So anyway, I thought I could share a few of my bad habits, but then I thought that it would actually be a lot more fun if I just shared some of Pip's bad habits with you. So anyway, so first of all, there is this habit that she has with gum, with chewing gum. And it's one of those she's one of those types of chewers which has that real kind of like, I feel like the person outside of the house could even hear her chewing. Okay, and then there's the habit of leaving shoes everywhere except at the front door, where they're supposed to be. And then there's the habit of not knowing where she left the keys. And then there's the habit of her losing the phone. And then let's stop there, right? I mean, yeah. But I mean, we've all got bad habits, don't we? And I suppose I could talk about a few of mine. Yeah, but we don't really have time for that. So anyway, let's move on, Anyway, we're into week 2 of our topic, habits that matter. And hopefully you've been journeying with us over the past weeks. We have looked at the discipline of study. It's great to see some of you guys joined in our reading through Ephesians. So these disciplines are all about things that help us connect to God. This week, we are kicking off the discipline of prayer. So here we go. What do you think of when you hear the word prayer? Do you think of it as something which pastors do? Maybe it's grace. It's just something we do before we eat. Is it something that mum and dad do all the time? Is it something that like good Christians do? Is it just it's the way that you talk to God? Or if you need anything, that's what you do. You ask God for things. So often I think prayer becomes this real non-personal thing. We do it at the odd time, we do it when we want something. And when we're doing it, we're so often thinking more about the right words than actually the heart behind what we're actually saying it and if we're actually meaning it. And sometimes we just find it hard to pray. I don't know if it's just me, but have any one of you ever given anyone else the silent treatment? You've just been so annoyed at someone that you just stop all communication. It's just, you just don't talk to them. You kind of show your actions. You have no eye contact with them. You stop texting them. You kind of just ignore that they're there. And when they ask you, hey, you're good, you just give them a short kind of yes. And however many minutes, hours, days, this carries on, there's a breakdown of connection between you and your silent treatment person. And you can even be sitting right beside each other, like watching a movie, doing something together, yet there's this connection that has suddenly been stopped between you. You could be watching your favourite movie, just carry on watching your favourite movie, where you normally would be reacting to what's been said, or you'd be reciting the next word, or you would be laughing about all the inside jokes that you guys have with each other. But this time, there's tension, and there's just nothing between you. Like, you don't share what you find funny. You don't really kind of talk, I suppose, or interact. And it just gets really awkward. It's like you're together, but you're not together. And so, stopping that communication between you two has suddenly stopped the connection. Now, prayer is all about communication. It's how we communicate with God. It's communication which enables us to chat, to get to know, to understand, to work together, to share back and forward with God. And it's absolutely amazing. And ultimately, if there is no communication with God, then that means it's really hard to have connection to God. You see, communication creates connection. And so one of the things that I want us to focus on here is prayer is a learning process. When you meet someone for the first time, it's often like really awkward, I'm talking straight to you introvert people right now. There's all this small talk, long pauses, you're asking about the weather, not really sure what to say. It's just kind of awkward, eh? Or when you run into that person, maybe from back in primary school, who you used to hang out with, but you haven't seen them in a few years, and even though you tried to avoid them, you kind of didn't have any eye contact with them. They still came right up to you and wanted to have a bit of a conversation. And you start a conversation and it's going really good, but really quickly you just run out of things to say. You just don't really know what to talk about. And again, things just kind of get really kind of awkward turtle again. And this might be the same for you in prayer. You could be new to this prayer thing and just don't really know how to do it and don't really know how to pray except for kind of the small talk. Or you could be someone who has prayed previously and so you just don't know what to talk about either. There's a lack of communication because there's a lack of connection here. Now, just like we're talking about friends, often the beginning is awkward. Even if you think back to establishing a friendship, the beginning is quite often awkward. But it's pushing through the awkward that is when the communication gets easier. You learn what they're interested in. You learn what topics they like to talk about, so you talk about them. You learn what they know and what they're interested in, so you talk about those things. You learn what they get up to, and so you talk about those things. You learn what they're good at so that you can get them to help you do that. You discuss things that you have found an interest in, that you've found connections in. And so it gets easier and easier as you go. And what's the key here? It's something that you learn. When we are learning new things, it can be awkward and not that great, but it does get better. Prayer is the same thing. It's something we learn and it's a process that we go through. Which means you actually can question, you can experiment how, you can even fail trying in prayer. And the thing is, as you fail, you actually get to try again and it gets better and better the more you try and the better the understanding you get. Now the disciples in the Bible, the group of people who hung out with Jesus the most, in Luke 11 verse 1, they actually came to Jesus with this kind of problem they had. They wanted to know how to pray. And they came to Jesus and they said, Lord, teach us to pray. Isn't that fascinating that the people who had spent the most time with Jesus still wanted to know and learn how to pray? So as we pray, we will learn who He is, we will learn and we'll get to know God better. We will learn what He cares about. We will learn to love Him more. We'll learn how to work together with Him. And we'll learn to communicate better. Like I've said before, disciplines aren't easy, but small disciplines can lead to life-changing results. Hey, okay, let's go for a walk. I want to think about something.
So this week we've been reading through Ephesians, and there was this verse about prayer that described prayer as something so much more than a once a week, once a day thing. Ephesians 6:18, pray passionately in the Spirit as you constantly intercede with every form of prayer at all times. This verse talks about firstly to pray that which is God's Spirit, so things He cares about. Then it says to pray consistently, so all the time. We are to talk to God persistently and about all matters. Nothing is too big or small to discuss with God. So I want to challenge us. If we are to connect with God better, then that would mean we'd have to increase our communication, and to do that we will need to pray more. So I don't necessarily think he's meaning pray out loud everywhere you go. I think it could be as simply as in your mind or throughout the day, talking to God about how you're doing, how you're feeling, maybe even noticing things and thanking Him for them, seeing people and asking God to intervene in their lives, making communication consistent. Prayer is an attitude where we are aware of God in everything we do.
So the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is the how. Now, prayer is all about communication, not talking, necessarily. So this week, I really want to challenge you to get creative in your prayers. Explore what prayer looks like, how prayer could look like. So here's some examples. Why don't you draw your prayers? Why don't you get abstract and get some paint and paint your prayers? Why don't you write it in a letter? Just like on the Bible app, how you can create those Bible verse images and you can post those on social media and things. Why don't you do the same, but with a prayer? Create an image with your prayer on it and share that. How about in your notes on your phone that you actually just write your prayers down? I challenge you to get creative this week. Explore what it means to communicate with God. Because remember that prayer is all about a heart-to-heart connection. And as we communicate and as we go further and further in our communication with God, our connection with Him will get better and better. So I want to leave with this quote by Smith Wigglesworth. He says, "I don't often spend more than half an hour in prayer at one time, but I never go more than half an hour without."